Hello everyone, it's Adam here. I've had a few people ask me this year in terms of my job as a music composer specifically for video games. Most of you know me on this channel for doing teaching videos, so I thought it was worth doing a video for you guys, just giving you some tips and tricks on music composition specifically for video games and kind of my process in and around that with a bits of theory here and there, and to see if it's something that you are interested in doing going forward in your own compositions. So yeah, let's get into it. So currently I've been working for a video game studio called Singing Dragon Studios for the last couple of years now, and to be honest, I've actually finished most of the music for it. We're probably about 95% of the music is actually done, and I probably won't write anymore until we get closer to release and see if there's any music that's missing in story or cutscenes, or we just need to bulk out more variation and some background music for the video game. I think my first real tip for diving into video games and learning how to create custom music for someone else is when you are talking to the producer or the director of the video game, really trust their vision, what they want their game to sound like, basically. You might think you're composing the most awesome music in a certain genre or style, but actually when it comes down to it, they have an idea of what the end goal is when all the elements, when the art, the animations, all the textures and the music and sound, when it all comes together, they know what they want to achieve. And so trust their vision regardless of your preference, of your style. I think when we first started back 2 years ago, my approach was to go down the route of kind of Stranger Things, that sort of synthy sort of sound, a bit more 80s, because that was kind of popular at the time. But in the end, we went with a more orchestral sound, bringing in some guitars and other bits of pads and stuff like that over the top of normal orchestration within average orchestra. But it wasn't just about what style of music the producer wanted. It was also, how do you want to make the player feel? Do you want them to be in a safe environment and for them to feel relaxed within the game? Or do you want them to feel kind of on edge a little bit of the time, or just a sense of loneliness within the game? So for this particular game we've been working on, we're working in a post-apocalyptic storyline. So a lot of it's going to focus around that element of there's not really anyone around, so there's a sense of loneliness to the music. But there's also going to be times where there are creatures or enemies going at the character, and we need to have music that fits the tension of both that ambience, that kind of loneliness, also that driven and tense kind of music, similar to like an Avengers fight scene essentially. But maybe with like hints of horror here and there, but we didn't want to focus too much on that because we want some moments of lightness and some moments where it really kicks into gear and takes the player out of that relaxed mode. So I think for today, I'll kind of take one piece of music that evolves into many different pieces of music that works throughout the game. In terms of my choice in getting started, I am trying to think in minor keys at this point, because that sense of loneliness doesn't come from me being like, there's nothing within that major chord that screams loneliness. So for me, it's looking at relative minors. So for instance, for the song that we're going to be doing today, we're technically in F minor basically, but I like to think of it helps my brain a bit more if we're in G sharp major, because I think of all the chords within G sharp major. So F minor to me is a -6, so we're going to be going with that essentially. And in terms of what happens next, in terms of like where does the first bits of magic and kind of music come from, there normally is kind of two ways it tends to happen for me. One, I'm literally just kind of noodling on the piano, just trying out new ideas, just trying different combinations out of what I already know, what I can kind of draw on. Particularly if it's sort of rock music, I can draw on little elements of that. And then the second thing that can kind of help me make music is sometimes I'll get a little melody or a little hook, and I tend to call these like themes. Like if you think of Star Wars and you've got dun 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 dun, you think, okay, yep, that's a Darth Vader theme. So it's a specific musical theme that could be associated with a character or a place. It's just a little bit of repetition musically that helps you connect to the character more. So with this piece of music, I think I actually started out with the melody first, and literally all I had was da 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 da, and I thought, okay, yeah, that's a little bit kind of creepiness in there, a little bit kind of horror sense, and I was like, okay, so we'll go to the piano and we'll kind of use our ear and kind of figure it out. So it was like, and I was like, yeah, that's cool. And then it just, I then kind of figure out, is there a key that surrounds that? And so with that, that's where I stumbled across F minor. So we got the chord backing it. from there, it's really just about playing around with that melody and seeing which chords within the scale kind of fit around it. And so for me, the chords I started out with were F minor, and then we're going up to the first, so we got G sharp major, and then we're going to the minor second, so we got B flat minor. And then this is where it got a little bit, I think I was undecided, because naturally what you would do after you've done a minor second is if you wanted to go up to the next chord, you go to a minor third, which was fine, but I was like, it's sitting a little bit too moody, and I wondered if there could be a little bit more of a heroic sound. So again, kind of coming, it's still trying to be moody, but there's a little bit, just a lift at the end. So we're still taking the minor 6, major first, minor second, but then this time I did the third as a major third to give it that lift. So if you ever listen to the chords, yeah, I think I just ended up preferring that in the end, to be honest. So we got that little melody, so if we kind of sing along, and kind of mixing and matching around that. So that's literally kind of where I started with it, and just getting used to that melody up there and seeing what chords fit under that. Now obviously I'm going to throw in extra chords here and there, different sorts of rhythms and everything as I'm going along, but that was the kind of base of where it belonged. And I would use that, just that melody there that I kind of sung, I'd use that in a ton of different places within music that I'm doing later on, so you'd always hint back to it. So once I've got the chords down and I've got the melody and I've kind of got the bare bones of what I want, just chords and melody to start with, I'm not going to worry about the rhythm too much or the instrumentation. My first job is just to get it into Logic and get it up as a piano file and kind of figure out what tempo I want for it and what kind of speed. That can change later on. I end up using this melody, I think 3 times altogether in 3 separate pieces of music. If you can see on the Logic file that we're actually starting on bar 98, and that's actually because when I started recording the piano piece, I then just kept writing on top of it and trying out different chords, and I ended up writing about a 3-minute piece. And then within that, the producer went away and had listened to it, and he went, I really like this and these elements, but actually just focus on this middle section for now and play with this because it'll have a particular purpose, and we'll go on to that in a second. So literally, if I play it to you, we just went through the piano part, so here it is. So it's slowed down much more than it was before, but still the same melody, same chords. I think I've shifted it up an octave since what I played. And then transition it into a B section. And then back to the A section. So just a really small segment, that's all we need for video game stuff. You know, most of the time it'll just last between anywhere between 50 seconds to a minute and a half piece of music, depending on what scenario they're going to be used for. So now my kind of job is to basically start layering it up and bringing in other instruments, basically making my fake orchestra essentially, and kind of building it up from there. So usually I'll start with some drums, get the pulse and get the feel of it. So for this particular track, the producer was like, right, this is the opening track of like when you log into the game, and it's basically a chase scene where you're running away from the enemy. And so at the moment, this kind of lullaby almost piano doesn't work for it basically. So we had to we're going to keep the same tempo, but we're just going to bring in all the instrumentation that's going to make it a bit more dramatic. So we're going to kick those electric guitars in, we're going to do strings. So all together, this is how it sounds. So the electric guitar is taking that melody yeah, that is more rather than kind of an ambient track. It's definitely more purposeful. So it might be used in boss fights as well if we get round to it. But its main purpose is that opening scene and kind of that opening gameplay to really hook in the player as much as possible. Originally, when I kind of put all this together, I think this is probably about the third or fourth variation of the orchestration. I think it was a lot softer. Just because I picked it up from piano, it was just so soft in its melody and kind of its twinkliness that I need to shift it around. So before, I just kept the piano in. Let's have a look. So I'm going to take out the lead lines, and you can have a listen to it. It still sounds nice. Nothing wrong with it. But when that electric guitar kind of kicks in and it just it shifts it up a notch, it does work really, yeah. I agree with the producer. I think it sounds. There's a little bit more epicness to it. And in terms of arranging and like what instruments I'm using and how I'm thinking about the different sections, I mean, each of those are a separate video in themselves, basically. But one thing that's important to know in this kind of orchestral, more kind of battle fight, cutscene, gameplay, whatever you want to call it, video game music, textures are really important. So what I mean by textures is they're not necessarily melodical things, or they're not necessarily melodies or anything like that, or chords underneath it. So for instance, if I find a little section towards the end, that little, I wouldn't consider that a melody. So this is just like a metal guitar part. The texture helps to have a nice transition back to the A section, essentially. If we have a little listen again. So with it, so yeah, it's just one of those instruments and one of those sounds that can kind of help transition, rather than just like, oh, here's another cymbal slash, or just to change things up, basically. You've got enough repetition in there, it is, with the same chords and the melody and the A-B sections and stuff like that, whereas it's nice to fill in the blanks with other bits and bobs. So texture is really important, especially for stuff like this. So yeah, that's kind of a little breakdown of a very basic breakdown of kind of where I got to in terms of the latest variation within this piece of music. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'd love to do more videos on tips and tricks for writing music for video games. So if there's specific stuff, whether it's theory or general composition stuff or logic stuff for writing video game music, just feel free to leave a comment below, as I'd love to create more content like this in the future for people that are interested in video game music and how that process happens. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.